right, hello. We're going to go ahead and paint a canvas black. So I just want to show you how you can take any canvas and paint it black, and then you can do a black canvas painting on top of it, which I do all the time. So what I want to do first is just take a flat brush. It could be any, or it could be really any brush. The bigger the better, because then it's going to be less effort for you to get it covered. And then you just want to get some pure black paint. You're going to get it on your brush. And then go ahead and cover the surface of the canvas with black. So it's pretty basic. I like reusing old canvas that I have maybe done some demonstrations on or whatever, that I just want to turn into a different painting. So you get to use it more than once. So it's a really good use of materials. So notice I just kind of make sure that it gets in the tooth of the canvas, which is that texture that you see on there. And if you have a wrapped canvas or anything like that, you can go all the way around the edges to make it look a little more finished. And then we're going to be able to paint whatever we want on top of this as a black canvas design, which I do a lot of black canvas designs because I just love it. I love the contrast that that dark black canvas creates really effortlessly. So you just have that foundation of really, really strong contrast just right out the gate. So you're good to go. But make sure you don't leave any like awkward clumps. Try to smooth it all the way out. And you have got your canvas painted black. Now, if you just let it air dry, it takes maybe 10-20 minutes. If you go ahead and use a blow dryer, it's going to take just a couple minutes. So go ahead and do whatever you want at this point to get it dry, and then we'll be ready to come in and actually paint something on it. So there's the black, painting the canvas black part. You can do that to a blank canvas too. So you could take a white canvas and turn it black. All right, so we're going to paint a very simple little snowman, and you can customize the colors. So I highly recommend thinking about doing that as we go. And we're going to start with just a Filbert brush. We've got our canvas already painted black. Just make sure it's dry, and then you're good to go. And I'm going to use just a medium Filbert. This is a 8 Filbert that you can use, depending on your canvas size, you can customize that. And I'm going to start with just the white. So we're going to just use the white paint. And what I want to do is create some like shoulders for the snowman. So I'm going to go on the left side and just make a little diagonal line coming up, just a little bit. And then on the right side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up maybe just a couple, like not too far. Maybe just go about a quarter of the way up the length of your canvas. You can always change it. I'll make another little diagonal line on both sides. So we have 2 sides. Then I'm going to come up straight on both sides. And then from that space, I'm going to put the head, which is going to go just above these shapes that we're making right here. And it's just going to be like a circle. So I'm going to go like this. Don't want to go too high up. And then I'm going to go all the way around, just making a snowman. If you actually made a snowman, they're not always totally straight, or perfect circles or anything. So we don't have to worry about making it look perfect. And then from the head right here at the top, I'm just going to pull up and over and down. So I'm not off the canvas, but I'm close to the top of the canvas. And then I'm going to curve it down back to the head like this. And this is going to be like the top of a hat. We have that shape. You can put a little circle at the end of it. So see how we just have now head, hat, body. It'll come together. Always looks really crazy at first. No, right where I made this little diagonal line coming up here, I just want to make another little line, a smiley face coming down right here. This is going to be like a scarf. And then I can go ahead and add some little triangles coming out. Just like that. So make a few lines. And then in between, I'm going to color this in white. So just taking that Filbert, and I want to color around the bottom corners here. Coloring these in white. And remember, the hat and the scarf and all that can be customized colors. So this is going to be part of the scarf, the shape, and these shapes. We're going to make them a different color though. And the face is going to be white too. But the hat, we will do a different color. Now notice how it looks really streaky and not so awesome. That's okay. It's just our first layer, so I'm not too worried about it. So what I want to do is to color my hat in. So I have the face and the body colored in. This black part right here is going to be a scarf. This sort of triangle part up here is going to be the hat. I'm going to make the scarf kind of a blue color, like maybe a turquoise. So I'm going to use white mixed into blue, which I already have. And then add just a little bit of green. If you want more of a green vibe, just use more yellow. But I'm kind of going with like a turquoise. I just like want to see that color right now. And then I'll go in over my white a little bit where I want to see the scarf shape take place. It's okay if you go over your white a little bit and make sure there's plenty of white mixed in to your color because we are painting on a black canvas. You need the white mixed in for it to stand out. So notice how I mix a lot of white into my turquoise. Okay, so that's my base color for the scarf. And then I'm going to clean my brush because I do not want this color to be on the hat. So we're going to clean that and then dry it off really good. Make sure your brush is always clean and dry, especially painting on a black canvas. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint my hat. And I'm going to do more of a pinky color for that. So red with a little bit of white mixed in. And give us a pink. And I'm just going over the white part that I already outlined for the shape. It's going to take a couple layers to get this to look the way we want it to. I'm just going to keep saying that because I know sometimes people get a little frustrated with the black canvas because you can't layer too much at once or it will start to pull the black forward. And you have to just let it look kind of bad for a second and trust the process. But I like that aspect of it. Kind of fun because you get to see it come together layer by layer. It ends up looking really cool. And so now the hat shape is colored in. When we do our shading and all that stuff, it'll make way more sense. So for now, again, you just have to kind of accept that it's going to look weird. Now, we can also add some shading on the snowman, the white part of the snowman, and we can start to add more layers to that. So we want to let the scarf and the hat dry. So they're going to be kind of awkward for a second while we clean our brush again. Make sure to dry it really good. And then I'm going to go in with more white on my snowman face. It's going to take a couple layers. We're also going to do some different colors too while we're in here. So that looks a little bit better. But I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of white for the tip of the nose because we are going to be putting on a nose. And just imagine that the nose is coming from the center of the face, the center of the circular shape right here. And it's going to pull up and to the left. And we're just going to see the tip come out into the black canvas. So I'm just using the edge of the brush, make it into a little bit of a point. And then we'll go ahead and color that in and make it look more, make more sense in a second. This is going to be a little pom-pom at the end of the hat, so we can add a second layer of white to that, and you can even fluff it out a little bit. Make it look a little bit textured if you want. Just adding little taps with the edge to give it a little bit of a fuzzy edge. A little bit of texture. And then we want it to dry a little bit. So if you're like me, I like to use a blow dryer because it goes a lot faster. So I'm going to hit it with the blow dryer. So once you have it dry, you'll be able to tell because it won't, like if you touch it, the paint won't come off on your finger anymore. So you can always do a little tap test and make sure it's not too crazy. And then what I'm going to do is start working more on the hat and the scarf and getting some different shades in there. Now, if you want, you can always switch to a smaller round brush or something as we do the layering. So sometimes I'll switch to something like this. This is just a number 4 round. And then what I can do is start to add some different shades to the actual scarf. Now, for this, I would just use less white in my color mix. So it's basically the same color, just less white added to it. Blue with a little bit of yellow. And now it's like a darker shade of turquoise than my first shade. And then I would go to the bottom of my shape, which is my scarf, and go ahead and add to that. And then I want my scarf to look like it's coming out from here. So I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow on the edge of my little scarf pulling down. Same thing with this one. You can put it kind of around the edges of that shape. Almost like an outline. And notice I do it really loose. Loose is good. And I can even do a little bit at the top of the shape, the top of the scarf, or around the edges. And if it gets a little too crazy, you can always blend it out a little bit by adding more white back in and kind of pulling it along the edges of where you put the shadow so that it looks a little less harsh. So we can always do some more layering by coming back in with our lighter shade. So it's just adding more white back in and then kind of putting another layer and letting it go up against your darker color. And then you can go back and forth a little bit. So sometimes you need to do a little bit of back and forth to make sure you see a shadow, but not so much to where it's like taking over the whole thing. So that looks a little bit more like it has more depth. Now what I want to do for the snowman face itself is to go ahead and add some shading to the snow. Now the snow shading that I want to add is going to be just blue and white, like kind of a frosty blue. No yellow added here. And this frosty blue I want to put under the hat shape. See how that looks a little different? Under the scarf. You can kind of put it around the scarf shape. Just to give it some, and maybe around this little fuzzy thing, just put a little wiggle. You can put it under the nose where we're going to put the carrot. Give it like a little shadow right there. And you can put it around the top of the scarf, so that we have almost like a border. You can even put it kind of around the edges of the face. Maybe not too much on the front of the face because we want that really highlighted. Don't go too crazy. And then you can always come back in with a Filbert or, you know, whatever you want to work with and paint more white on the snowman and kind of blend out that color that we just put in. So you can paint over it a little bit, maybe spread it around a little bit so it doesn't feel so isolated in the area that you put it. So I usually do that kind of quick. I'll put in some shading and then I'll come in with my light color again. For the snowman, it's just white. Sometimes it's a different color depending on what we're painting. Not only will it give me an even richer shade of white for the snowman, but it will blend out that shadow a little bit. I like to do it before it gets too dry because acrylics do dry kind of fast, depending on your weather. So now we have just a little bit of a better blending situation here. A little better. And then we can start working on the hat. So the hat is going to be very similar. You're using, and I'm not even cleaning the brush because I mostly just have white on it. You can clean it if you want. And I'm using the Filbert just because it doesn't really matter too much what brush you use. Just depends on what you feel comfortable doing. I'm going to go to the bottom of the hat with more red in my mix so that it looks like a darker shade of pink. So this will be like a shadow type color. And again, you can go around the edges a little bit. I can put some vertical lines to maybe make it look like a snow cap. And then I can put a line on top of that. So it's so easy to make these shapes. And then I want to make this look like the tip of the hat coming down. So I'll put a little shadow under that and maybe around the edge of that as well. And then I can add a little bit more white back into the mix to blend out the shadow just a little bit We'll go even more intense with the shadow on this one. But for now, we just want to start to see the shape come together without too much pressure. That way we know where we want our shapes, and then we can enhance them. And notice I can go in between those little vertical lines with the lighter shade. So we have, and then you can go back and forth a little bit. Like I can add more red back in and go back and forth. Notice how I'm not doing it too carefully. Sometimes what I notice, especially when I'm, in person with people, is they're almost trying to be too careful to the point where they're not really expressing themselves. It's like they're just more focused on trying to get it right. I don't advise that that's the best way to start out with the process. I mean, there are moments where you can get a little more precise, and that's okay. But you also don't want to completely shut off your playfulness, because that could tend to make everything really stiff. Now I want to make the nose orange. So I'm just going to add some yellow to my red. And then I'm going to color that in, this nose shape. So you just kind of go in, paint over the white. You can add a little bit of white into the orange too if you need to. Make it look a little bit richer. Sometimes I just mix a little bit of white in. Yeah. Now we have like a pretty good foundation for all the colors. Like we know where all the colors are going now, which is good. And that way we can get a little more specific with our shading. So we want to take our shades darker so that we get more contrast. So what I'm going to do is create some purple. I'm going to take a small round brush. I'm going to take red and blue mixed together. This becomes a very nice shadow color. Look how dark that is. Love it. I'm going to go, for example, around my little pom-pom thing, and I can almost like outline it. Do a little bit of squiggling in that shape and give it some more life. And then for my hat too, I can kind of come in and underline it with that purple. Maybe the hat is a little wet still. Mine is. It's okay. It's still going on. Sometimes it's fun to layer while it's a little wet. That's just called wet on wet. Gives you a different effect. That's not necessarily wrong. You may enjoy it, you may not. So it's fun to explore. But I want to maybe come in and add a little punch to the underside of my scarf. And even the underside of my nose. So this color can really work throughout the whole design as a good shadow. Just the red and the blue. And then I want to go under the little tip of my hat here, the little part coming down. And then I can go up into my little vertical brush strokes to make the edge of the hat. Maybe I want to go to the top here. Really just almost like outlining, but not everywhere. It's a little more heavy on the bottom of things. You can use more blue in your purple mix to make a more of a blue violet. So maybe that's a better shadow color on your scarf because that's more of a blue tone. So I can play with that color. And I'm just going back over the same spots again. And I'm letting my brush get kind of wild. Like let some of that shadow pull out into the up into the shape a little bit. So it's not just like an outline. It becomes part of the texture. And then if I'm highlighting my hat, maybe it's more red, more of a red purple. So see how I can change the shade of that shadow color quite a bit so that it suits different part of the design. And that is what it's all about. You're just adjusting things. And letting it kind of fit into this particular vision. It's so much fun. And I'd say this reddish purple works really good with the orange too as a shadow. So the more red I add, the more it's going to be like burgundy. And then this is a really good color to do shading on the underside of the carrot, which I just want to kind of pull little lines that curve slightly from the bottom and pull up into the shape just a little bit. That's kind of fun. Then we can clean that little brush and we can begin to add some more like highlight colors. So what I can do, and I'm just using a smaller brush so that we can get more specific with where we want the highlight colors. So for my scarf, my highlight is just a lighter shade of teal. I would add more white into my teal mixture so that it's even lighter than my first shade. And then you can go in there and kind of wiggle it in towards the opposite side of where your shadows are. Notice how I just kind of wiggled it in because it's funner to do that. And then I can also clean my brush. And if I want to add highlights to my hat, sure you're drying every time you do it. They're going to be a lighter shade of pink. So it's just pink with a lot of white, even more than before. And then just come to the top of the hat and swoosh in. Notice how I'm kind of squiggling it in. I just like to be really loose with it. And I maybe even add a little bit of that pink to this little pom-pom thing. But I can also just use pure white and add that to the little tassel at the end of the hat and leave the shadows showing. Notice I still see the purple in there. That's really important to be able to see that. But notice I can do like a pure white highlight. It doesn't have to be pink or teal. It could be pure white too. So we're getting there. And then your highlight for your nose is just this orange, but add a bunch of white. And then you're going to come in the top of the nose and add that color. And you can even pull it down opposite into those little grooves, but going the opposite way. So then now you have some texture on top of the nose. And maybe you want even just some pure white on there. Maybe there's some snow collecting on top of the nose. So that's kind of fun. But just look how much more, alive the colors and everything look after just doing some layering. It takes a little bit of patience, but it gets there. So I want to do some snowflakes, and I'm going to use the small brush with just the white. And our snowflakes can be really wherever we want. But like, for example, I just get the white on the tip and say I want to put a snowflake right here. I will just put a dot first, and then I will pull up really light, down really light, right and left, and then make a little X through that. And that gives you a good starting point for a snowflake. Then you can have some arrows kind of pointing in. I usually will alternate. Like I won't do it on every single one. I'll just do it on the T shape so it doesn't get too cluttered. And then on the other part, I'll do a dot. But I could still do a dot at the end of that E shape too. Maybe I'll do 2. And then kind of re-emphasize the dot in the middle. And then you have a fun snowflake. So you can do that a bunch of times, but you can add some variety to it. So sometimes you can make it even simpler, but it starts with that basic shape pretty much, or at least that's what I do. I'll just come in, find a spot where I want to put one, add my dot to start, and then I will, you know, do a T shape or an X. Barely touching, and then do another little shape between that. And then everything gets a dot. So that's a more simple one where you're just doing the dots instead of the arrows pointing in. So that might be a better option for you. So it just, play around. Try not to stress about it. And put a little snowflake on the hat. And you just want to make sure that the paint is just on the tip of the brush so that you're not giving yourself a hard time with making the lines, which can be a little tricky if you have too much paint on your brush or if you just have the wrong kind of paintbrush. Some brushes are just not, the bristles are too frayed to do that. So you do need to get a brush that's not going to give you too much of a hassle with that. And I'll do one on the scarf down here too, just to make it look like the snow is falling. And then I'm just going to add a bunch of dots everywhere, like snow falling. And maybe you want to add some different shades of snow falling. So I can do some light blue snow too, which is just blue and white, and then go in and add dots for that too, because that could look kind of pretty to have some variety rather than just the pure white. So sometimes I'll do pure white, but then sometimes I'll do another color, especially if you want to make it look like there's snow falling on top of the white part of the snowman, because the white's not going to show up. But if you have the blue, it'll look a little bit better. So I'm just adding blue dots, white dots. And just notice how the blue will show up on the white better. But then the white will show up on the blue and the pink, or the blue better. So, you got to switch it up. And then last but not least, so now it's like so pretty, except for there's no face on the snowman, which looks a little weird. So we're going to make sure to add a little face in there. And then we can use our black for this. So we're just going to go back to what we started with the black. And you can also use the black to paint over anything like you don't like how it turned out. So that's there for you as an idea. I'm going to use that small round brush. This is a number 1 round. And then we're going to do the eyes and the mouth. And you can do different things for this. I'm going to do an eye. Or you know what? Let's do it with blue first. So you got your black ready to go, but let's do it with the light blue first. Blue and white. That way, just in case we don't like it, we can change it over and it will act as a fun like back shadow. So just come up to the right here on your shape. Like kind of just right between the nose and the face. And then you're going to make a rainbow shape and then curve it out a bit. Go up and then curve it. And then the mouth, we're going to go under the carrot, right? Under the carrot, in between the carrot and the scarf. And let's give him a little thing like that. Okay. So that's good. That's like eyes, eye and mouth. I want to give some rosy cheeks too. So I'm going to take a little bit of pink on my brush. So clean it. And you can put it right in this little cheeky part here. Let's give him a little cheek, a little circle, and just rub it into the white right above the blue there. That's kind of cute. I like that. And then we're going to finish it off with pure black. So I'm going to clean the brush and I'm going to just retrace my steps. You can do some little eyelashes on there if you want it to be like kind of girly. And then notice how I'm letting some of the blue still show. And you can even enhance some of your shadows if you want with the black, like under the nose, under the scarf. You can clean up any edges. You can erase any dots. So I can always go in and kind of clean things up. Notice how I can make this look a little more fluffy by pulling the black into it. I can make my purple look a little bit more dark by putting a little bit of black. So I usually will come in and just check my contrast a little bit. Give it a little, really just a small little push with the black there, just to make it look a little more intense. And then we're just going to imagine the nose is covering the other eye. And I'm going to call it done. So thank you for painting this fun snowman with me. And hopefully you had fun and learned a little bit. And I will paint with you again soon.